Howdy, folks. Good late afternoon, I should say. So, it is Saturday, November 27th, 2021, and I do have to say, you guys, this month went way too quick. Or I should just say, this entire year went too quick. Yeah, I will say this has by far been one of my most adventurous years. So, as part of this video, I actually want to present a couple of different native plants that you can find in a scrub habitat. Oftentimes, a scrub habitat is basically a piece of land that has been allowed to develop over time, which was at one point just a sand dune. As you figure, the majority of Florida used to be underwater, under the ocean. However, though, due to climate change actually happening, that could actually change the landscape of Florida drastically. But going back to what I was saying, I'm out visiting the Amberjack Environmental Park, which is based in Placida. It's a little bit to the south of Inglewood, so we're kind of in between Boca Grande and Inglewood. So I noticed as I was hiking along here, I noticed a particular native plant right here. See this? See that little cluster right there? This is actually something called a Florida Rosemary. Now, the very first thing you may have in mind is it the same type of rosemary that we use in our cooking? I hate to break it to you guys, but no. It actually is not the same type of rosemary at all. Totally different. And actually, as a matter of fact, the Florida rosemary hasn't even had any culinary use whatsoever. Honestly, you probably really don't want to, just because you just really won't get anything out of it. However, though, it is still indeed valuable for our native scrub habitats in Florida. So as you can see, they oftentimes are in clusters. They're usually rhizomatic, but they have great potential for growth. It's actually been found that these can grow at least 8 to 10 feet tall, if allowed. However, though, these plants usually take quite some time to mature. Usually they don't begin producing, berries, their food until they reach 15 or so years. And then they don't reach full maturity, like for further reproduction, until at least 20 to 25 years. So these plants are actually very slow growing. So with that being said, they actually have a particular property that is fascinating about them. Florida rosemary is actually known to be allelopathic. Now, to some of you, this may sound like a very fancy word, but that's how botany is. There's a lot of fancy terms that basically describe something simple. But allelopathic means this guy, the Florida rosemary, they pack particular chemicals in their roots that basically don't allow any other types of plants to really produce nearby. They kind of have like their own little bubble, you could say. Similar traits is actually found in one of the invasive plants that is up in my home state of Ohio, the garlic mustard. However, though, the difference is Florida rosemary is a native plant, so that's the good news. But Yeah, I mean, wildlife can still feed on this, but very seldomly. It's kind of like a last resort type of option. And another thing, too, to note is if you touch it, if you kind of touch it along the stem here, it does produce a little bit of a rosemary-like scent, but still, don't use this for culinary reasons. Please don't. Not worth it. But as you can see, along the stem here, they have all of these tiny little leaves. I mean, they are tiny. They're probably like about the size of my fingernail. And then they produce these blooms at the top. Now, sometimes their blooms usually happen in early fall. So, honestly, it is already past that time. But yeah, that's the Florida Rosemary. And pretty much the only threat that the Florida Rosemary really faces is loss of habitat. That's the biggest thing. But yeah, you'll oftentimes only find them in a scrub habitat. That's it. You won't really find them in hardwood hammocks or anything of the sort. And you can't even see them at a currently active beach. Excuse me. But another thing you can find out here at a place like Amberjack is the Sands live oak. Now, some of you may be a little confused. Like, is Sands live oak really the same thing as live oak itself? No, they're actually two different things. See, the thing is with live oak, Sands live oak, the one right in front of me, is the fact that Sands live oak doesn't really grow that large. They might only be 8 to 10 feet tall. They don't fully reach that maturity like live oaks do. Like live oaks, on the other hand, they can be 20, 30, and even 40 feet. Now, Sands live oak too, just to note, it's actually very resilient when it comes to prescribed burns. So they're actually, in a sense, a bit difficult to get rid of. Unless if it's forced removal, of course. But they do serve as a great asset for our wildlife because they also produce acorns as well. And please remember, for those of you who don't know, when you say acorn tree, that's not right. All oaks produce acorns. So, I'm just saying, like, if you just point it out as an acorn tree, it just doesn't sound very knowledgeable. I don't mean to be degrading by any means, but it's helpful to know the type of oak that you're seeing. Especially if you have a property and you're considering which type of oak you want. So, not trying to be degrading by any means, just a friendly reminder. Now, what I forgot to mention about the Florida Rosemary, too, is, the plant that you saw above the surface, that can be burned quite easily during a prescribed fire. But then the roots, they receive no harm whatsoever because they're basically underground. So they don't really feel any effect. So they have that ability to grow back in a decent amount of time. But yeah. Every now and then, too, if you're lucky, considering that we are getting close to dusk, we might actually be lucky to see a bobcat out here. That's like one of the most common types of mammals that you'll see in Florida, besides that of the Florida panther, excuse me, because most bobcats are crepuscular, which is, of course, another fancy term for our fellow homies, meaning they're most active during dawn and dusk. A little piece of more wisdom right there. So, alright, you guys, I just realized that I'm nearly approaching 11 minutes. So, pardon me. I hope you guys found something of value from my video. Use the knowledge if you want. And I appreciate all of you watching. Alright. Enjoy your weekend, and once again, Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.